the ball. Joining me now, Steve Pomerantz. He's the former assistant director of the FBI, #3 guy at the FBI, who also served as chief of the FBI's counterterrorism section, had 27 years with the FBI, and so we are honored to speak with you today, Steve. You're a great guest to have on this.
Thanks, Megan.
Of course, there's going to be Monday morning quarterbacking on this, and let's just say the FBI got this guy. You know, they ultimately got this guy and the brother within 5 days of the attack, but we have to take a hard look back and find out why they didn't have him on a watch list, they didn't know more about him, and why they would have closed a file on a guy who, you know, according to Steve Emerson, 3 years ago, which would have been, you know, prior to 2011, started posting radical jihadist-type videos on his YouTube channel.
Well, let me say this, as the former chief of counterterrorism, to get the kind of information that's being talked about now in relation to this individual is a extremely common occurrence. Happens not 10 times a week, but hundreds of times. You get fragments of information from foreign intelligence services about people living in this country. Oftentimes, they're general, just as you described it, so they have some extremist ties. What does that mean? What can you do about that? So, but it is certainly the responsibility of the FBI to follow up on that information, which it sounds like they did.
What would they have done? What would they have done?
Okay. You do checks on the individual. You do some rudimentary investigation. You look at his activities as best you can. Talk to some people. Review public records. See if he's got arrest records. Try to get some sense of what is he employed? What is he going to school? Once you do all that, if there's nothing concrete, look, this is a free country to post hateful material on the web, to engage in propagandizing, and act in sympathy with certain terrorist groups is not illegal in this country until you cross that line where you do something that actually is illegal. We have hundreds of people, if not thousands of people in this country who we have identified as having some sort of sympathy to foreign terrorist organizations. And in the nature of this democracy, there's only so much you can do. Sure, you can put him on a watch list. Sure, you can add his name to a database. But that doesn't in any way infringe on the potential for that person to ultimately engage in an act of violence.
Here's a tough question. As I see it, the toughest question out of this. Even if all of that is true, then why on Monday night, in the wake of the terror bombs in Boston, didn't the FBI, you know, the guy who had talked to him, because the mother of these two suspects is claiming the FBI used to come to our home, they used to talk to me, they told me that my son was really an extremist. You know, now the mother's also said some wacky things, but so I'll put that catch on it. But they admit, the FBI, they looked into him. Why on Monday night didn't they say, all right, terror attack in Boston? We just talked to a guy in 2011 in Boston who had been red flagged to us. Let's just look at our records. Let's go back and look at all of our records. Oh, wait, there's his picture. Oh, wait, he looks exactly like suspect #1 that 4 days later they asked the public for help identifying. Yeah,
I can't answer that question, Megan. I don't know whether that was done or whether it was not done. You would think if they had that kind of information, if they had a photo, that would have been done. And I can't answer that question as to why.
Would that, I know it's so easy to Monday morning quarterback, so please forgive me. I'm playing devil's advocate here. But would that normally be done? You know, when you were running the counterterrorism division, if you on the Monday night of the bombing attack, would you have said, I want all leads we've had in Boston in the past 5 years on possible extremists, you know, and you know the general age range, it's usually guys in their 20s or 30s. You know, would you have said, these are the criteria, go pump them into the system, everybody who's been talking to possible extremists in the area, get back to me with a report?
You know, Megan, I use that old expression you've heard a million times in terms of investigations on law enforcement. You round up the usual suspects, or at least you identify the usual suspects. That's one of the first things you do in any kind of a criminal investigation. And this ultimately or fundamentally is a criminal investigation. And you certainly do it. You try to identify likely suspects in the area. Whether that was done in this case or not, I just don't know the answer to that. You know, everything that was done by the FBI, I'm sure is going to come out out because you're asking good questions. Everybody's going to ask these same questions. Certainly Congress is going to want to know. So to go back and see what kind of information did we get, if indeed it is from was Russian-based. What did the FBI do to follow up? What did they do in terms of going back and asking the Russians for more detail? All of this is going to become public and obvious in the months to come. I'm certain of that, and I think it's only fair to wait until all that is in and then make your judgment. You can't look at this fairly at this point in time and not come to the conclusion that law enforcement in general, the FBI in particular as the lead agency, did a terrific job in terms of responding, of gathering evidence, of controlling the scene, of dealing with all the outfall of all of this, and ultimately in very quick fashion identifying and arresting the perpetrators.
You know,
it's been a great job.
We live in that 24 CSI, NCIS world where people believe it's so easy. You know, you just pump the information in the computer and you have all the answers. And
that's
sadly,
unfortunate, Megyn.
It's just not true.
That's unfortunate. And, you know, now comes the really difficult part and the part of the investigation where people need to be patient, because the FBI and the rest of the intelligence and law enforcement community will turn inside out to identify any possible additional suspects and subjects, to determine all the activities of these two guys. The net will be cast far and wide, and every lead will be uncovered. And we need to have some patience to allow them to do that, because this is not CSI.
Yeah.
It's the real world.
This is the real world. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome.
All the best to you.